Good morning. This meeting of the Baltimore City Council Health, Environment, and Technology Committee is now called to order. I'm Danielle McCray. I am the councilwoman for the 2nd District as well as the chair of this committee. In attendance, we have Councilman Mark Conway representing the 4th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We also have Councilman Ryan Dorsey representing the 3rd District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we have Councilwoman Felicia Porter representing the 10th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Councilman James Torrance will be in shortly. From the mayor's office, we have Sophia Gabrin-Hewat. And we also have staff to the committee, Matthew Peters. Before we get started, I'm asking that everyone please take a moment to turn off or silence your cell phone. Today, the committee is holding hearings for LO 22-0027, Quarterly Legislative Oversight Hearing for the Department of Transportation, and LO 22-0019, Quarterly Legislative Oversight Hearing for the Department of Public Works. We are going to start with LO 22-0027 for the purpose of calling for quarterly oversight hearings for the Department of Transportation regarding agency operations, staffing, safety of fleet, facilities and equipment, and other responsibilities to improve transparency and accountability in serving the residents of Baltimore City. We're going to hear from the representatives of the Department of Transportation, and then we're going to have an opportunity for committee members to ask questions. At this time, I understand that you guys do have a slideshow, and what I'm asking is that you skip the first 9 pages, which is the agency overviews. We did discuss that during the last oversight hearing. And if you can go directly to the recent milestones on the presentation.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair McCray. I am grateful to be here today and leading a hardworking, dedicated team at Baltimore City DOT, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here before you and the other members today. Before we get started, I'd like to take a quick moment to allow Liam Davis, Legislative Affairs Manager, to introduce all the different members of DOT here with us today.
Thank you, Director Johnson. So joined with us today, to my right, we have Deputy Director Braxton. We're joined by our ATVS Division Chief, Philip Mellerson, our Maintenance Division Chief, Kendall Abu Hakim, Deputy Director Theo Nagongang. We have our Traffic Division Chief, William Haynes, Director of Communication, Marley Mazcardona. We have Bamal Devkota, who is our Tech Division Chief, Nick Fontanez, who is our HR Division Chief. Looks like that's Adam Cloud back there in the corner, who's our new Right-of-Way Division Chief. In addition, Stakeholder Engagement Chief, Tarina Galloway. I see Valerie LaCour back there, who heads up our new ADA division. DK, who is Chief of Fiscal. Deputy Director Gardner here. We also have Ola Olamide, who is the Conduit Division Chief. Robert O'Brien, who heads up our Capital Improvement Plan and Traffic Mitigation Fund. And Webster Mulba, who is our Chief Data Officer.
Thank you, Liam. So getting right into it, as far as our recent milestones, on this slide we are showing you the different recent grants that we have been awarded, as well as some projects that have received awards as well. We recognize, of course, we have a lot of money coming in from the federal government. We have certain other local funds, but we always strive to try to find other ways of bringing revenues into DOT and to get projects completed. And so the first one is the Safe Streets for All grant. We received $1 million, and this will be focused on the action plan, modeling injury and health. Recently, we received the passenger ferry grant in the amount of $5 million to buy both new ferry hybrid electric vehicles to replace the older vessels and to improve ADA accessibility at the water taxi landings. And then into our project recognitions, just recently we received 2 awards, one for the North Avenue Rising project that was in partnership with MDOT MTA, as well as the Frederick Avenue slope replacement. So we continue to be a leader in both seeking valuable grant dollars and completing award-winning capital projects that benefit all Baltimoreans. Continuing into our agency updates. So we've been publicizing it throughout social media and all of our other communications about the efforts we're undertaking going after the Reconnecting Communities grant for the Highway to Nowhere. And so we are very excited about this potential transformational effort. If successful, this is a project that will have generational impact on the neighborhoods that have been historically marginalized and overlooked. And so we are working towards having an upcoming listening session. Although we don't have the grant award yet, I'm speaking into existence, we don't have it yet, we're working towards the efforts, hoping that we will receive it. And so we are looking to engage the communities, hear from them, let them know where we are, what the plan is overall, but let them know that they very much have a strong voice and will be a component of this transformational effort. And so that is scheduled for Wednesday, February 15th at 6 p.m. It's going to be both in person and held virtually. So we're hoping that as many people in that West Baltimore community and beyond will join us that evening. Now we're getting into our curbside dining. So we take a very strong engagement approach when it comes to being a leader in policy development. And so this is one where we took the emergency action that was done here throughout the pandemic and worked to implement an actual policy that addresses all the needs and concerns when it comes to curbside dining. We had an initial 30-day comment period where we received over 1,000 responses, and 85% of those were in strong support of the program. And so now we had another second 30-day comment period to address those comments, to integrate what people shared with us, and try to make the policy even stronger. And so we're working towards having a official rollout of that policy starting effective the new fiscal year. And then as far as the electric vehicle chargers, we are closely working with the Baltimore City Parking Authority and partner agencies to finish drafting a comprehensive set of regulations concerning these chargers. And we wanted to be both equitable and consistent in how they are implemented and structured throughout the city. Into the legislation updates. As you're aware, legislative session is underway currently in Annapolis, and we are excited about working with both the Moore and the Miller administration, in addition to our friends in the Maryland General Assembly. And we are confident in their commitment towards Baltimore City, particularly when it comes to transportation. This is a very hopeful time for the agency. DOT has had recent success in Annapolis and is approaching 2023 as a year to set new goals and begin laying the groundwork for further legislative success. And so as you can see here for 21 through 22, there were some key legislation that was adopted. Of course, we are experiencing right now the benefits of the 83 legislation. We have the automated bus lane enforcement that we're working on, as well as the speed limits authority and the higher user revenue legislation that, again, right now with all of the influx of the federal dollars, this additional HUR coming to the city will be monumental for us. For the 2023 legislative session update, HB 0613 is a bill that is extending first responder assault protections to traffic and parking enforcement officers. And so that has thankfully been assigned to committees, and we're waiting, hopeful that will continue all the way through to become legislation. Then there's legislation designed to further clarify the process of establishing trespass tow rates based off of the recent Attorney General's opinion. And then finally, there's the ATVES chronic offenders bill, where we're seeking to boot and impound vehicles associated with excessive number of traffic and parking violations. On to stakeholder engagement. So much, if not all, of what we do depends on public engagement. And at the end of the day, we are all public servants. That's why we're here. And so the work that we do is directly impacting and benefiting the lives of both those that are living in our wonderful city and those that are traveling in and through the city. And so I look forward to providing each of you all with an update on our efforts to strengthen our community engagement efforts. And so as you see here, we are actively planning a reintroduction of key agency staff to the council and trying to clarify some of the communications and make sure that we're keeping a good framework for how responses and concerns and things are coming in, and making sure that we are adequately, properly responding and giving clear information. And my staff here can probably attest to it, that in our regular meetings, I'm telling them we've got to be clear in our communications and explain the why. A lot of times knowing the behind the scenes of what's going on and why things happen or why something can't happen is critical in our communications with the public. And then on to the Charm City Circulator. So we have worked through that transition with the new operator, and things are smooth. Things are looking up for the Charm City Circulator. We remain committed to operating a safe, reliable Charm City Circulator for Baltimore residents, stakeholders, and visitors to utilize. First Transit has been taking a great action on working with us in partnership. They've had a lot of outreach to have some successful hiring events. They've been going through and doing back to the basics type of training for their operators. There were thankfully some drivers that were sustained through that transition period, so they didn't start from ground zero. Vehicles have been extensively inspected and repaired, which they've diligently been working on that and giving us regular reports. Buses have been upgraded to new tracking technology. We've got many different communications going out there, and then there's finally a press release promoting a new and improved tracking app for residents. And so although we initially had a hotline number that we were managing and updating, there is that new app available for users to see real-time efforts or frequencies for the buses. That concludes the presentation portion of our slides, and we open it for any questions you all might have.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to start with just a few questions. The Reconnecting Communities grant, I love that you guys are being proactive about the listening sessions, about the other work that we need to do around the Highway to Nowhere. When would there be a final decision on if Baltimore City is awarded that grant?
It'll be this spring. In our mind, we're kind of anticipating the April timeframe, but we just know it'll be spring.
Thank you. As far as EV chargers, how far along are you in working with the parking authority in establishing that draft?
Madam Chair, we've been working with Parking Authority on this effort as far back as 2019. So we at DOT established a internal working group with a number of agencies, including DOT, Parking Authority, Law, Rec and Parks, and that group helped to work out an existing franchise agreement with BG to operate EV chargers in the public right-of-way. And based on that experience, we've been working to really craft a EV charger policy and set of regulations that we think are going to work for Baltimore City. There's been a ton of research looking at other American cities and North American cities, seeing what has worked and what hasn't, and we're really excited that the new policy will probably be ready to go in another couple months, which have to get the director and the administration fully briefed up to its current status.
Okay, that was my next question. For this one, how are you ensuring within the final document that these EV chargers will be placed equitably around this city?
Yeah, that's a great question. So under the existing franchise agreement, there's an actual MOU that's attached, and that MOU is actually available on Legistar. And what we built into that franchise agreement was a provision that requires geographic equity tied to socioeconomic demographics. So it requires that under the BGE franchise agreement, that 30% of the chargers installed be installed in census tracts with the lowest quartile household income for the city of Baltimore. So you're guaranteeing at minimum 30% of the chargers are going in areas that are lower end of the income spectrum.
Right now, the Department of Planning and DHCD is finalizing a middle neighborhood strategy. Has there been any discussion of EV chargers and middle neighborhoods within Baltimore City? Because when you say geographic equity, I want to ensure that our middle neighborhoods are also getting a fair share of these EV chargers as well.
Most definitely, and specific to the chargers, we've worked closely with the Office of Sustainability out of planning. And I think another thing that is built into our equity kind of component with the chargers is understanding these chargers are supporting, single occupancy vehicles a lot of times. So also built into the consideration is, what's the proximity to like a major road or an interstate, proximity to a hospital, to a grocery store. So there's other metrics to look at. And we do, the long-term vision for this program, like think about how common parking meters are in the city. That could be this charger portfolio another 15, 20, 30 years out. So the idea is to have a very robust public system, and definitely take your point on the middle neighborhoods very seriously, and we'll bring it to our group.
Councilman Dorsey.
Thanks. I just have one little follow-up specifically on that. Does this policy, I have concerns about EV chargers being placed in the interstitial space, in the curb space. For instance, the one plan to go in the 2200 block of Chesterfield along Herring Run Park, it seems to me that those chargers would be better placed on an island in the roadway rather than taking up the park green space adjacent to the roadway. I know that when I go to places like the Waverly Farmers Market, it's kind of a monstrosity to have these big charging transformers off of the roadway when they're really street infrastructure that seems like they should be in the street, helping to further delineate the location of these parking spaces and segregate those parking spaces specifically for EV chargers. How does that fall in this plan or policy development?
Yeah, so the franchise agreement for BGE, which is where you're seeing a lot of the new chargers, it's for public right-of-way and for public parks. And the actual first chargers that were installed under that franchise agreement were in Druid Hill Park to support the zoo. Rec and Parks is involved in all of these conversations, and there have been conversations and feedback provided to BGE about minimizing disturbance to parkland. And I also know that within the policy in its current drafted form, we have language to prevent any negative impact on city trees, street trees. From the perspective of DOT, we are mostly going to be focused on in the right-of-way. Similar, again, I think a great parallel to this conversation is parking meters. So we work very closely with Baltimore City Parking Authority on the installation of the meters. But taking your feedback to heart, it's still a relatively new thing, and if we need to be a little stronger on the park aspect, that's the great thing about the administrative procedures process is we have that 30-day public comment period where we can get this feedback and then apply edits, as you know that we're very well seasoned in, Councilman.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, but I do want to make clear my concern is there's a distinction between in the right-of-way and in the roadway, and that's where I think they belong, is in the roadway.
Okay.
Not taking up curb space off the roadway in the right, while still in the right-of-way.
We can definitely talk about it because there are some creative things that we're considering, but it's just kind of conceptual right now. But we can talk about it.
Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me the follow-up question.
No problem. At our last hearing, the agency noted that you were experiencing some material shortages and had requested emergency procurement through the Department of Finance to alleviate some of the issues. My first question is, were you able to work with finance to procure the necessary materials?
Yes, so we've successfully been working with Department of Finance. I know that we have gotten in a large shipment of the poles. Just recently, we got 2 other contractual needs approved. DK, if you could, or Kendall or whoever, speak on those other items from a material standpoint? You can use your microphone there.
Thank you, Director. Yes, we did receive a significant number of the channel posts, which was a delay in getting signs put up. We did get some other materials to actually fabricate signs. One of the items that we're still waiting on is pre-cut metal. So, but at this point, we're in a pretty good place to be able to create and install signs.
With the new materials, are you guys still going to be having any delays with putting up signs? Or maybe I should ask this, what's the current existing, say, backlog of signs that have been requested and need to be installed that you guys have approved?
Well, they're currently working through those backlogs now. There was a significant number of sign installation requests from the parking authority for handicap parking, as well as the traditional signs that you see along the right-of-way. So we're in the process of getting those installed right now, and we have been taking advantage of the warm temp, so it's a pretty good opportunity for us to get those signs put up.
What we can do is we can follow up and let you all know what is still outstanding that we potentially need, and kind of give you a picture of what that backlog looks like and kind of how we're attacking it.
Thank you. We have also been joined by Councilman Torrance, and Councilman Torrance, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I add, I'm going to make it more specific to the request because I have a number of outstanding poles and signs. So I want to know the backlog as the current number, the number of you have procured, and then what is the difference between what you procured and what you're actually going to be able to complete. That way we know what the actual need is so we can push finance for you to get additional.
Okay.
Because I just don't want you to give me what the current backlog is and we're not meeting the needs that we have outstanding, so that we can push finance to get you additional supplies so you have it, so that when we get into the season and people are out walking again and see something, they'll be able to have it done and we're able to be caught up. So just let us know the truthful number, the number that is how much we actually have to meet the backlog, what we need to meet the backlog, and what we need to have on supply to deal with the new requests, so that we can have a conversation with the administration about that as well.
Understood. Thank you.
The last portion of the request is that I just want it broken down by the types of signs. I know that there are several residents within my district who are waiting for handicap signs, so we can also break them down by the type of signs as
So I-
well.
And we can. So I believe, so I am aware that we had those outstanding handicap signs. So I think those were being prioritized as soon as we got some of those recent materials, and the team was working on getting some of those implemented. So that's been one of our top focuses, to address those.
Okay. Committee members, Councilman Torrance, do you have another?
I have one last follow-up. I have a number of residents who are no longer with us who have handicap signs. What outreach are we doing with Parking Authority to retrieve those poles and those signs as well, if the person is no longer with us?
Got it.
present day?
You guys speaking something.
Oh, to make it clear for everyone else, I just want to know what outreach are we doing to re-procure signs when a person is no longer with us, so that we can use them elsewhere, because there are a number of outstanding signs in neighborhoods where the person's no longer there. We're getting emails from residents who are saying, my neighbor has died, it's been 2 years, can we get the sign back, right? So I just want to know so that we can start thinking about how do we do a public campaign to get those signs so that we can meet the need as well.
Thank you, Councilman Torrance. We'll pull that information as well.
We're going to move to Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I did have some specific questions related to some sidewalks that I know you all are working on. I'm super grateful for that. I want to talk through the coordination between the agencies, between, like, if we have DPW, DOT, can you speak to how you all are updating that coordination? I know you all have been doing that internally, but just for the public record, and also for other committee members. I know there are similar issues across other districts that that process may be helpful to be shared.
Do you have any information on that? So what I can speak on, and I don't know if we have any additional information right now. So I know that when service requests and things come in, we're first investigating it to see kind of what the need is. If it's something that needs to stick within the Alleys and Footways team, then it stays internal. If it is something where it's tied to an inlet or some other type of utility-related something, typically those service requests will end up getting transferred to them for handling, or it may potentially be something where there was some damage done via some old street cut. And so our internal street cuts team we're going to research it and coordinate with the permittee to have them make the necessary repairs. Beyond that, I can't speak right now to say if there's anything additional that is done, but I know that there's been, recently we've been having more collaboration and communication with the other agencies, and in working with you and trying to meet your side requests, I've been working with the team and trying to develop a system to kind of better track that and know who's the responsible agency, and then make sure there's some tracking and further dialogue with that. So there's also been more recently more interagency collaboration between myself and the other agency heads as well. So
That's good to know. And then the weather-related schedule for like alley repaving, sidewalks, can you speak to that weather-related schedule?
What was part before the schedule? What was,
Yeah, the weather-related schedule. So I know there are weather-related barriers when we're doing any type of sidewalk repaving, alley repaving, and things of that nature.
Got you.
Construction schedule.
Understood that. Okay. So obviously, because of the sidewalk and being concrete, the alleys typically being concrete, that is a temperature-dependent type of work. And so typically, we're not going to do concrete work here during these colder winter months. So we're going to wait until we get into the spring when the temperatures start to rise. So depending on how our fall looks like, typically construction seasons end usually about mid-November. But if we have a warmer fall, sometimes the work can continue into late November, maybe even early December or so forth. And then the same thing on the spring side. So it's more so during this really cold months is when you'll see a slowdown in concrete and asphalt work. And so that's some of those factors. So we're more constrained to kind of like 7 to 8 months out of the year potentially where we're able to do that type of work.
Sure. And so, Madam Chair, may I have a formal request? Are we able to obtain the number of current repavements that you all have upcoming for this season? And if there are any backlogs, can it be shared with the council?
Just to make sure I understand your question. So you're wanting to know the number of requests for alley?
Yeah. So number of requests for any sidewalk repavement, alley repavement, and if there is a current backlog from DOT.
Okay. So, and just for everyone's awareness, so when we first get a request for, let's say, alleys, for example, it goes through an investigation process. It may potentially be a repair that is done, or some type of repair done by maintenance, and then it may get referred to the DOT's Alleys and Footways team. And so then, once it's determined that we might need to do an alley replacement, it goes through a process with public engagement. And even at that point, if it is determined that we are going to move forward in doing some work, just like all the other projects and things we're dealing with, it's a matter of it getting the funding designed and scheduled for that work. So typically that process is going to be about a 3-year period. So when we talk about the backlog, are you looking at just anything that's out there, or are you looking at beyond that 3-year time frame?
No, I'm looking at anything that's out there.
Just any of the rest?
Yeah, my goal is to really understand from an operations perspective what is kind of lacking within DOT. What are some of the constraints? And Liam, I know that you, okay. So what are some of the constraints budgetarily, operationally, and also from other weather-related constraints as well? Madam Chair, may I have deference to ask one more question?
That's fine.
Thank you. Related to traffic calming and speed bumps, if you could, I want to really understand the traffic calming process because I know we've had significant conversations within my district about traffic calming, what that looks like, but we have specific intersections that are known to have high crashes, pedestrian concerns. And I know we're going through a large traffic calming throughout the district, but I'm still very concerned that there are streets in the district that have been declined for traffic calming, whether it be speed bumps, stop signs that still need to be there. So I want to really understand the process from DOT, what you all look at in relation to traffic calming, and if there is a need to revise that process, because I currently don't see that it's actually helping any traffic calming in the city, and particularly in my district.
Okay. Well, I'll ask Chief Haynes of the Traffic Division to speak to our traffic calming process and how, make sure you use the microphone.
Sure, I can share a little bit about that. So currently what we're focused on with our traffic calming is to, because we know we have a long backlog, is to identify redundancies. So, we may have a request for the same corridor or segment in 2019, maybe one in 2020, maybe one in 2022. So we've been looking proactively at all of our service requests for traffic calming and grouping those geographically so that when our associates go out and do an investigation, they're sort of feeding two birds with one seed. They're able to address a number of requests just in that one review. Our approach generally is to collect speed data. We do still rely on speed data, but we are also looking at target speed, which is consistent with our Complete Streets policy, which is not so much relying on how fast people are driving, but just looking at a community and saying, okay, how fast should people be driving in this community? And sort of right-sizing improvements to sort of address that. But primarily, we're looking at three specific characteristics. We're looking at the speeds or the target speed. We're looking at the crash history in the area, and we're able to do that on a rolling 6-year basis. And then lastly, we look at equity. And I don't mean lastly as if it's the least in priority, that those three are sort of things that we sort of equally consider when we're trying to prioritize. The backlog is citywide. It's in all 14 districts. And so the equity really comes in terms of prioritization because we know that some of these communities have been historically underserved.
Yeah. I thank you for that, Mr. Haynes. Madam Chair, may I have another formal request, please?
Sure.
Thank you. I'd like, based on the three criteria that you just that you shared, I'd like those three criteria segmented for all of the backlog that you all have in DOT related to traffic calming requests, and if there was any decision made, whether it was yea or nay, and what the traffic calming, whether it be speed bump, stop sign, wherever, I'd like to see that and I'd like to see that data. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand. So for all of our traffic calming requests that we've either approved or denied, sort of how we've looked at those three criteria?
Yeah, so I would say within the last three years. Yeah, I can say 3 years. So, yeah, within the last 3 years.
And I just want to clarify, the policy is relatively new. So this policy has been in effect just recently.
Okay.
Prior to that, it was a petition process also that was involved, and that did result in a lot of traffic calming requests not moving forward because of the arduous nature of getting petitions signed. And so we've even actually taken to going back and looking at some of those closures
Okay.
To try to address that. I will say it is a heavy lift to dig into each and every one, but we can certainly start to do that over a period of time.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm really trying to get at the equity lens of each of the traffic calming requests, making sure that what's happening in District 14 is happening in District 9 and District 10.
Sure.
And also, more importantly, if traffic calming requests are closed out erroneously when the community knows, they know that crashes are happening at that particular intersection, and the Department of Transportation comes back and says nothing is happening there or there's no need for additional traffic calming there, I think that's a clear break in the system. And so that's the goal and intent of reviewing this data.
Understood.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis, there's something that's on the DOT website. Can you speak to any public-facing information that shows the work that you guys are doing? And I think that it's mandated by the Complete Streets legislation.
Yeah, and it's a great question.
Goes around what Councilwoman Porter is looking for.
Yeah, that's a great question, Madam Chair. So the Complete Streets legislation, the ordinance that was adopted several years ago, requires us to draft and submit to the council an annual report. That's on our website. So if you just Google Complete Streets Baltimore annual report, it'll come up and it'll list every single traffic calming project that we've done and put it on a map. Quick builds, speed humps, street resurfacing, sidewalk repairs. So the report is designed for us to hold ourselves accountable. Now, the one thing I do want to say, so we heard for a long time of the confusion related to traffic calming for the department, which is why we've created this new policy, and that's why there is a new policy now. Something to keep in mind, though, is when we opened it up and took away the petition process, that plus people working from home during COVID, we saw a huge spike in the number of traffic calming requests. So where we might have typically gotten 300 or 400 a year, it was more like 600 or 700. To put that in perspective, last year we set an agency record for speed hump installations at over 160. It blew past our old record of 120. But even that 160 is a fraction of the total number of traffic calming requests that were made. So William and his team and our Complete Streets office are constantly having to make that challenging decision as to which projects get greenlit and which ones don't, because there's just not enough. Like, it's like drinking water out of a fire hose is the best way I can describe it. But these are great questions, and we're taking notes, and we're gonna make sure that you are all provided that information.
Thank you. And so I'm aware of the plan. Actually, the reason why I'm asking that question, the data question, is because that data is necessarily not reflected in the plan to the granularity that I'm asking for. So I don't want to kind of just regurgitate the data that's presented in that plan. Based on those three criteria, that's exactly what I'm looking for, those three criteria that are missing from the overarching kind of language within the plan. But thank you, Madam Chair.
So I want to get back to footways, and I have a specific. I have my own requests regarding those items. First, I'll ask this: what ARPA requests was placed in? What ARPA requests were put in or requested by the department specifically regarding footways and sidewalks in particular?
So we did put in an ARPA request for ADA sidewalk. Do you remember the value of that request? Okay, thank you. All right, so the ARPA request for ADA sidewalks was $45 million. And so obviously when we are doing capital improvements, then it's going to address, all of the ramps, the sidewalk, and so knock out some of those footways requests.
Okay, and that would include just standard repairs of footways as well, of standard repairs of sidewalks that are currently existing right now.
So it would be a capital project. So for example, if you have a block where there's some pads that are broken and stuff messed up from tree roots, if we were to have gotten that money, then whatever the stretch would be, we would go in and remove the existing sidewalk, remove the existing ramps, and build everything new. And so if you had, say, 5 requests in that block for footways repairs, then those 5 requests would have been addressed since it was all the new sidewalk constructed.
Were you guys approved for that amount?
We were not approved.
And if I can just, I think scale is always helpful. We estimate that in order to, and this is related because it's ADA, but in order to get the city's infrastructure fully compliant, we're talking about $890 million for design and construction. So it is a huge number, huge.
Do you have the exact number of confirmed, not just put in 311 tickets, but sidewalks that have been confirmed that need to be repaired within the city?
So right now we're working on an effort to do some additional asset management inventory to get a full sense of everything that's out there. So right now we have some ideas of what is representative. We know, of course, how many footways tickets are there because we can pull that data, but we're working on getting some updated information as far as specifically what all is out there that is potentially non-compliant.
So Myra, you can add on. My request is that if we can get a number of substantiated footway requests that we know need to be done within Baltimore City. One thing about the ARPA funds, and the entire council, not just this committee, was pushing for city services to be returned. But I know within my district, I know within other districts, we have a ton of footways that go way before pre-pandemic that have not been addressed. We have stuff from 2014 that people are just getting bills about. So that's what I want to see, Councilman Torrance.
Yeah, so this is another question I have. Have we looked at planning to discuss like new development? Have we looked at planning in terms of requests they've received for new construction as well in the city, so that we can have an agreement with, like, if someone is building a new apartment building, you do the footways, right, in front of those places, right, so that they can take the burden off of us if you're providing a new amenity to the city. Or if something is occurring, a significant, like a grocery store is being built, are you providing and fixing the footways around that actual site? Because what I'm finding is sometimes when we have construction, they mess up the footways that we did actually repair, and we're not checking on it. So I'm thinking that we might have to really tighten it up and look to sharing the burden. So if you are building a new project, how are we enforcing that you repair or replace the footways in front of your project? So that it's one burden that's taken off of us, because we're gonna have to get there, but we have to get there in a smart way and make sure that everyone's paying their fair share to get there as well.
Yes, no, understood. And that is a part of our developer agreement process. So we have, established the ADA division. And so as with anything traffic related, when we have those developer projects come through, they're distributed to all the different agencies and different departments within DOT. And so that goes to Valerie LaCourse division for review and comment. And so in the situations where someone has a development, they're building, reconstructing or whatnot, and then they're needing to look at the frontage of their property, those comments are being included. Same thing, like if there's someone who is going out there and doing some work, like with the street cuts, if they are impacting a ramp, then they're coming in and fixing that itself. So there's a different approach when it's new construction and things like that versus more for the maintenance and repairs, but that has been integrated into our review process. And so I think those concerns you have are being met.
Have we even included even homeowners? Even in my district, I've had people install driveways and mess up the footway.
Councilman,
I'm sorry. Yeah. I just want to make sure, like, are we including homeowners as well, right? Because we've had people get permits from DCHD to install a driveway, but they've damaged the footway as well in terms of actual sidewalk. So I just want to make sure when we do the inspections that we're working with your sister agencies to get it fixed. Case in point, also in my district, when we did the new sewer installation, the contractor improperly installed the actual new sidewalks and curbs, and they weren't ADA compliant. So we had to get them to come back out within the contract period to do the repairs. So I just want to make sure that, like, while we're trying to get there, we're thinking to make sure that people who are disturbing what we've had fixed or could fix should be doing it right and making sure it is done to the standard so that we don't have to be responsible for it later.
Yes, so no, we'll reach out just to make sure that connection is made with housing, and also we have regular conversations with DPW and others about the work that's being done and making sure that everything is being done per the ADA standards. And so there's ongoing collaboration with that, and we have inspectors and those that are trying to police. But as always, if there is anything you're aware of specifically, feel free to reach out to me or my team, and then we would definitely go out there and inspect and address that.
I'm going to add one more thing just to the committee request. I want the confirmed ones that we need for sidewalk repair. But if you can also break them down, whatever the backlog is, by year of when they came in. So if we got something that's sitting there from 2015, 2016, I want to know how many, how far back is this going that we're waiting to repair as well. Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director. Thus far, your answers have been really helpful. I had a question that isn't squarely on the agency, but it's something that certainly the agency has been asked about and should always be thinking about. And that is doing work in areas where we've already recently done work, essentially redoing our work. It came to my attention earlier this week that there was a project on Greenmount that was a water main replacement that we'd done. and I guess I'll ask this question to DPW a little later on, but it took about 2 years to actually complete that project. Lots of complaints along the way. We finally got it done. The road is beautiful. One of the best roads in the city. I just learned that we put in a request in the capital budget to redo that water main. These water mains can last over 100 years, as we know. Nonetheless, this is not a DOT issue. It is related to DOT, but certainly when we put down new infrastructure, pave new roads and otherwise, where in the system for capital improvement projects do we make sure that we're not redoing work or undoing work that we just did? How do we make sure that that's captured? I'm not sure if that's something that's done at the agency level, at the planning department's level, or otherwise. And then tied to that, how do we make sure we're coordinating with DPW or any of the other utilities that are in the ground so that we're not having to go back and repave this road a couple of years later?
So currently we use a system within the right-of-way division called Invista, and so that we use that to enter in all of our DOT projects. DPW enters in their projects into that as well. So we'll generally be able to look and see if there's something in the design or construction phase. And then some of our other utility partners have information that's put in there as well. So, for example, when we're getting ready for our upcoming resurfacing programs, we're looking to see if there's any planned utility work or some other, water work, things like that. And if so, then we might choose another location to wait until that's done and then come back. So I can't speak specifically what happened with Green Mountain. We would be glad to look into that. So I'm not sure what happens from a timing standpoint, but we are working, trying to minimize those disruptions. For example, Vicinity is going to be doing some work here on Calvert Street, right by Mercy Hospital. And so when we first heard about it, there were of course concerns that we had, there were concerns that Mercy had, and so we instituted bi-weekly meetings with Vicinity, with Mercy, with DPW, because DPW also has a project coming through there, and DOT, and it's been a collaborative effort to not only review the design and make sure there aren't any conflicts, but then we were working and trying to help push from a Department of Finance procurement standpoint to get DPW's project out there as quickly as possible so that that contractor could collaborate with Vicinity's contract and try to minimize the disruptions while Vicinity has those trenches open there and impacted lanes. So we've been, and this has been something that's been going on for the last probably 4 months, that the team's been working really closely to try to help reduce those disruptions. So we are making some great strides in that direction to try to address that concern. No one likes to deal with it. The citizens, the people driving through there, we don't like dealing with it, when you have projects after projects. And so I understand the frustration. But I'll look at that one specifically to see, kind of figure out what happened there.
Yeah, I remember this issue intimately from my time serving the city before, and because so many agencies are working underground, that being DPW with water and wastewater, that being Veolia, or I'm not sure what their new name is, with the steam system, that being Comcast with things that they have underground, and then of course the work that you guys do at the surface level. As much as possible, I want to make sure that we coordinate before we pave a road, certainly from a transportation perspective, with all the folks underground, so that we don't end up paving a road and then Comcast comes behind in 6 months, which I've seen them do and I still see them do, and God bless Comcast, but it's incredibly frustrating when we have a brand new paved road and then we dig into it to do something, or we have a water main break after we've just paved the road. So, just thinking about that and what we can do to tighten that up. Certainly, our system may be working, but it is concerning to me that this request even went in to the planning department, and it wasn't flagged before then. So I did want to put that on your radar and think about where this may also be happening down the line.
Okay, thank you.
At the June 2nd FY23 budget hearing, DOT highlighted the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that would support major roadway and bridge projects with focus on resiliency, equity, and safety. Has DOT worked with the infrastructure office that's being set up or has been set up to develop a comprehensive strategy for competing for some of those federal dollars?
Yes, so we have very frequent conversations, whether it's a formal meeting or conversations between, Deputy Director for Planning or, other representatives from DOT. So we have taken a collaborative effort. We have a grants manager within DOT, so she's doing a lot of work and effort on research and trying to go for any money. And then with MOED, we're working with them on any type of further support efforts needed. So we've been developing a partnership with them, and they're kind of in tune with all of our efforts thus far.
How are you working with the infrastructure development office to identify, administer, and manage these infrastructure dollars?
So what we've done, for example, I know there was a lot of focus on our bridges, and so we already have a program in place where we have to address any type of structurally deficient bridges, and so we have projects like in the queue that are certain priorities based on their ratings. And so we've been working with them to determine where those projects are in the current process, and then if there's any type of funding that they would be eligible for, we should go after those funds instead of our normal federal formula funds and our normal process of funding those projects. So that's just one example of their efforts and their input given into our CIP. They've also gotten a whole list of all of our priorities and been examining those to see where some of those dollars could possibly fit in for us. I don't know, Theo, if you have anything additional to add?
Thank you, Madam Director. Madam Chair, in addition to what the Director said, we are also having monthly meeting with the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development, and our grant managers on both sides are working together to literally identify funding opportunities that are coming our way, whether it's them identifying them or us identifying them. The goal is actually to make sure that we don't lose track of what's coming from the feds our way when it comes to AIJA. So it's a team effort. So we have monthly meetings, and then at the management level, we have quarterly meeting between the directors.
Okay, you leading me into this question. So at the last hearing, you said that you were hiring a new grants manager. You
we
guys
did.
Made that hire?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
we did. And so did the Mayor's Office of Infrastructure Development. They recently hired a grant manager about a month ago.
Do you have any vacancies within DOT's grant department area right now? Any additional vacancies?
Not specific to grant management.
Okay.
The hire that we just made was the first one because we never had a grant manager within DOT staff before.
What's the name of the new grant manager? Are they here today?
I don't think she is here. Her name is Sydney Kimbrough.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Director. Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tavon, Liam, for sending that thing. I just got an email with some responses to things that we brought up last one of these oversight hearings, so I appreciate the work that went into putting that together. I want to come back to Councilwoman Porter's request on traffic calming because it is an abbreviated form of the request that I made during the budget last June, which I believe is an incredibly easy request to be fulfilled that has not yet been fulfilled. And if it were, she wouldn't have been asking that for that request today. I don't understand and have not heard any explanation as to why the department cannot or will not create a public-facing account of all traffic calming requests, existing, outstanding, completed, or otherwise. I asked for a spreadsheet to just simply be posted publicly. We continue to have the same kind of follow-up questions about traffic calming requests year after year, district by district, member by member, community by community. What is the status of traffic calming requests here, there, what happened with them? I mean, I even sat here and in a matter of minutes created a public-facing spreadsheet that the department could just fill in to create a public-facing account of this. Why haven't we done this?
So, and I do remember the request, and I think where the request originated from, if I recall correctly, is we did take time to review traffic calming requests specific to District 3. And I think part of the reason why it hasn't been done yet is understanding, while it does on the surface seem like it would be relatively easy, William and his team put a tremendous amount of time and effort into creating the list that we provided you. So again, it sounds simple to put something on the website and do a comprehensive list, but to do it right and to actually give it the thought and the thoughtfulness and kind of the analysis that I think the City Council expects, it's not something that isn't easy. It's not as easy as people think.
Okay,
No,
so
let me-
how long would it take? How long did it take to put the list together that was furnished to Councilman Dorsey for
So
District 3?
William can answer it, but what I just to clarify too is like it's not only that it's time consuming, it's that you're literally taking someone's capacity away from actually doing the traffic calming to do a summary of requests as to why you're not doing the traffic calming.
No.
So that actually is a real part of the issue, Councilman. I'm not just making that up. But William, if you want to talk about how long
I
it took
just
to
I
draft
just
yours.
need to know what is a realistic timeline for some of these measurable items that Councilman Dorsey is looking for the entire city, not just for one councilmanic district, but for the entire city. If it is additional staff members or data folks that you guys would need, we need to figure that out, because I think that the information should be public facing. Some of this information that he's requesting should be public facing. If you can just give us a timeline, a realistic timeline or the capacity of how long it would take.
Yeah, I think from an IT standpoint, to create something public facing, I have no idea because it's not within my expertise. In terms of digging through all of our service requests that are currently open, I've been doing that for the last year and a half. In fact, for each district, I have a spreadsheet of every open service request, and that's what we're taking to try to really tackle our older service requests. We meet biweekly as part of Operation Stat to look at our backlog and to look at everything from equity all the way over to what specific types of service requests we have a backlog on and how we're doing on a biweekly basis. So internally, we are sort of going through that process. You know, I honestly don't know what it would take to.
Do you guys have a data group within DOT?
So I'll jump in here. So we have people who are looking at data, but they're looking at and analyzing it and looking at it from a metric standpoint. It's a little different. They're not taking the information and say typing into a spreadsheet. They're not inputting that information. They're looking at it from a different standpoint. So it is a little different what he's talking about versus what the data team is responsible for. What I can say is that I know in the past, I don't know in the past specifically what was done to look at and manage each of the traffic calming requests that were coming in. What I can say is that under Chief Haynes' leadership, what they've done is taking more of a community approach. So what we saw in the past is if a request came in over here and another request came in over here, they may have been a couple blocks from each other. It may have been more of a situation of going out and assigning this one service request to an investigator to go and check, but this other one may have gotten assigned to someone else. So what they're now doing to try to be a little more efficient and effective in the traffic calming approach is saying geographically, what all requests do we have in this area? When we send someone to go and investigate, let's look at all of these and see if we're seeing any type of common thread throughout this area. And instead of just trying to make an improvement in this one location, what can we do in this general area to try to help with the traffic calming and then also subsequently knock out all of those requests at one time? So because of the way it was done in the past, and also we have been building up staff. So we're in no way close to where I'll say we need to be when it comes to the traffic division, but we have been building up staff. We have been hiring some new engineers and other staff to have the technical expertise to really dig into these issues. And so that is helping us move in the right direction, but the reality is that there was a backlog. We're still dealing with the backlog with the operations stat means that we're working on internally, the data team is digging into those numbers, and we're having conversations saying what's going on, why do we have these numbers, what did you all close out, how do we manage to close those out. Now, some of those things have been tied to, like when we talked about the speed humps, for example. Yes, at some point, it was because we were working on some of those signed materials. But then once we started receiving some of the materials and things like that in, then we were able to take action and go, and maintenance was able to implement and put those speed humps in. So we're kind of going through, I'll say, like a culture change and trying to figure out the best way of managing things within traffic. And again, recognizing what Liam referenced, the number of requests have exponentially grown. So it's a matter of trying to address that backlog, address what's coming in now, and then continue to build up the division from a resource standpoint, and again, from a funding standpoint. So what we're also looking at is where we have projects coming through, if it's a resurfacing job or some other job coming through, if we can make some, instead of just putting back pavement markings and things the way they were before, we're looking at what changes we can make as a part of that project so that we might be able to address some traffic calming needs as a part of another project instead of being a standalone. So there's a lot of different ways we're trying to address that, but it is a work in progress. So.
Thank you, Director. Councilman, I'm going to get back to you. Can we just center it to questions?
Yeah, I just...
Your request, thank you.
Look, I understand that making things sound more complicated than they are is a well-trod path around Baltimore City. I'm hearing a management problem talked a whole lot around in terms of operational issues. I am asking a management question here. Will just said that he has a complete list of all of the traffic
Who is
comment
Will?
requests.
You talk Chief Haynes?
Excuse me,
No,
Chief
it's okay.
Haynes.
Will is fine.
Okay.
And we do that
Has
for-
a complete list of all of the traffic calming requests in each district. I'm requesting to be given all of those. How about that? I mean, there's my request at the moment. I'd like to have all of those spreadsheets for every district in the city, because from what I understand, if what Chief Haynes is saying is that he has all of them, then if I compile all of them together in one place, then I have all of them, and I can do what I wish with that list since once it's in my possession, and I guess that'll be good enough for the interim. I want to know what all of the traffic calming requests are in the city. And so that's, I mean, I'm asking for it here right now. I've heard that I've already heard acknowledged that these lists exist, and so I'm making a Maryland Public Information Act request here, and you have 30 days legally that you have to give these to me at this point.
Okay. We'll initiate the PIA request process.
Councilman Torrance.
Sorry, I'm just going to do a meeting of the minds. Because I know that BPD has done this for me in terms when we do like holistic work within communities. I think you should, and this is a suggestion, and then this is one of the things that, and here's a request. The suggestion is I think we need to work with the data office about GIS mapping, because we do have that opportunity within 311 Salesforce to do GIS mapping. So whatever you do complete community holistically, you can put it on, you can map it, right? So the map allows people to see it so we can see it across our districts. It may be easier for us to digest that information than just giving us a spreadsheet. Because if I get a spreadsheet, it's nothing but pivot tables and charts to figure out where you got everything from anyway. What I want to do is push you to one, and this is one of those conversations about us in the new budgeting process. If we're asking you for something that you can't internally build, tell us how much it costs so that we can have that conversation with the administration, and that advocacy is coming from the council that has 14 votes on a budget that's coming before
I need
us.
you to speak into your mic, Councilman.
I just want to make sure I get this point across. Give us the number on how much it would cost to give you that capacity, because when it comes to budget season and we can cut and reallocate it, we can probably give you that opportunity to have that capacity moving forward in this new budget. So I just want to be clear, like this is the new age for the council as well as the administration. We can be collaborative in if there's a need that we may not agree with the priorities of the administration on, we may be able to push back and get things that we need to get done. So I'm making this a request so I can share this with the other 14 members of this council. How much it would cost to give you that data capacity to keep track? And then also another request is, where are we in terms of planning when the governor has released, is going to give us the state $500 million additional in transportation dollars to MDOT? The question is, how are we advocating at the state level for a portion of that to address outstanding needs as well? So I just want to know where the administration's foreplanning is, because given that that funding will be finalized in April and we've already started our budget, what is the pivot that we make internally in terms of supplementals and programs that we can think about ahead of time that we can agree upon to reallocate those funds to? So that's my request to Sophia, to make sure that we understand what that pivot looks like when we get the additional funding from the state.
So we have been in communication with the mayor's office to discuss our funding priorities. Liam, could you speak on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so just before the start of this session, we
Liam, can you be brief when you answer that?
I'll keep it super brief. We sent the Moore Miller administration our list of priorities, and I know that Theo's here and his team are actively working on the next priority letter for this spring.
Ms. Gavin-Hewat, we want to make sure that DOT is working with the mayor's office, whether it's the performance and innovation division. What Councilman Torrance said, in his way, he summed it up. He centered what I wanted to know. How much is it going to cost? How can DOT collaborate to make sure that they have the specific data needs to answer and actually do it the right way, to provide the right data to, say, a request that comes from Councilman Dorsey? This looks like a capacity issue. Was there any, did you have any other committee requests, or?
Nope, I just want to make sure no, sorry. I'm sorry, I hate this mic. I just want to make sure that I want a copy of, like, I know we got the previous priorities that we sent to the Moore Miller administration. I want to know when that $500 million hits the bank and is available for MDOT, what requests are we prioritizing given the needs that we now address in the current budget for FY24, right? So I know that we sent our priorities for FY24, and outside of those priorities, there might be some that were funded in that additional $500 million from the state surplus. I just want to make sure how we make that shift, because I think there needs to be have a conversation, because you're going to have to come back with supplementals. You're going to need all 14 of our votes again to move those supplementals, and we would just want to make sure we're in lockstep and agreement where the supplementals will go.
We can follow with that information.
Okay, we're going to close out with a question from Councilman Dorsey.
My question is simple for Kendall. You're the best, by the way. You really get things done. I really appreciate it. And usually when we talk, it's, hey, can we get this thing done? And I always say, oh, I have something else to follow up with you about. I have been sitting in this chamber for 6 years asking for DOT to account for damages to streetlights, because I think it's a really important and clear bellwether indicator of how robustly we experience danger on city streets, right? How frequently and how ubiquitously cars drive off of the road into pedestrian space, and where and when is a pretty clear indicator of danger. I'm gonna just ask that you and I have a real serious follow-up here about establishing a clear practice of accounting for streetlight damages from a baseline of every time a street light has to go and get cleaned up because it is damaged or knocked down, that a record be made right then and there of when and where it was picked up, because that is the clearest indicator of street light damages around the city. I have to believe 99% of which are because of cars knocking them down, not the wind blowing them down, right? Before the end of the week, I'd like you and I to have a sit down about how we manage to implement a process for this, because I don't want to come into this chamber for the budget again this year and be asking for that to happen again for the 7th year. I want a system in place before we get there so I don't have to talk about it.
Mr. Davis, can you ensure that something is set up with Councilman Dorsey over these next week to a week and a half where he can discuss this? This is an issue that he has brought up multiple times. And on that note, we thank you all from the Department of Transportation for joining us today. And thank everyone else for joining us. The committee is going to reconvene this legislative oversight hearing quarterly to continue this important discussion, and this hearing is now in recess. And Technology Committee is called to order. In attendance for this hearing, we have Councilman Isaac Gitchley-Slifer with the 5th District, and we have Councilman Mark Conway with the 4th District in attendance. So we're going to start the hearing on LO 22-0019 for the purpose of calling for quarterly oversight hearings for the Department of Public Works regarding agency operations, staffing, safety of fleet, facilities and equipment, and other responsibilities to improve transparency and accountability in serving the residents of Baltimore cities and others. We're going to hear from our representatives from the Department of Public Works, and then we're going to have an opportunity for committee members to ask questions. And we're going to start with the director.
All right. Good morning, I think it is, Chairman McCray and members of this committee. My name is Jason Mitchell, for the record, Director of the Public Works Department here in Baltimore City. Today we're going to present all the items that the chairperson, Chairwoman McCray mentioned. But before, just kind of really want to set the foundation of some of the great work that the Department of Public Works has been doing over the last year. You know, when I started this position about 1.5 years ago, one of the main topics was water billing. We heard that every single day. I'm certain that you all received many, many emails about it. You know, over the last year, we went from picking up the phone over 20 minutes to right now, I think last week we were under a minute. Over the last many months, we've been under 1.5 minutes picking up the phone. I started this position, we were at 14,000 emails. Right now, we have about 900, and we're responding within 3 business days. I started, the county had 7,000 meters outstanding. Today, they have 2. As a result of that work, and as the result of the many people you see here behind me, our revenue grew. And as such, our water rates went down to the lowest level in 25 years. It was the result of the hard work, and they were able to pull that off in a year and a half. When I came here on my 11th week on the job, I had to create a short, medium, and long-term plan about our wastewater facilities because they were out of compliance for years before many of these folks that you see here was in their positions. Today, the hard work of the men and women of the Department of Public Works, I'm pleased to say Back River is now almost 9 months in compliance. Patapsco is 4 or 5 months now in compliance. It took a lot of work to undo years and years of disinvestment, and I just want to say thank you to this team. When I came here 1.5 years ago, we didn't have boat pickup. We didn't have street sweeping. We didn't have recycling. We didn't have quart and can pickup. We didn't have graffiti. We had none of those services. I want to thank the men and women of solid waste. In 1.5 years, they got those programs stable and those programs for the community. They're doing, as you see from the report, they're working day and night for the city in which they love and which they live. And I want to give a tremendous thank you to the men and women of our Water and Wastewater Bureau, our Administrative Bureau, and our Solid Waste Bureau for the work that they've done. There's very few folks that could do that in 1.5 years, and it's these folks. If you look at the faces behind me, many of the faces that you see wasn't in these positions 1.5 years ago. They did not create the disinvestment that we had to deal with when I came here a year and a half ago. But they rolled up their sleeves and they did the work. And I just want to say thank you to all the things that they have done and all the information that you will see with limited resources, extra effort, working day and night. So we do something in DPW, and I hope my folks don't let me down today. We count out 1, 2, 3, and that means something for us because we always say that we're best in class service. So it's something that we do at all of our meetings because it's something that we're intentional about. And so I want my people to say it as we say it in all of our meetings when we start out. When we do employee orientation every 2 weeks, all the new folks that come in hear this because this is going to be ingrained in our culture and our DNA in DPW. And I'm gonna do my 1, 2, 3, so y'all don't let me down. 1, 2, 3.
Best in class.
That's what we are about, and that's what you're about to witness today. The change that has happened in a year and a half of years and decades of disinvestment, that these folks are making miracles happen with limited resources. But there's a lot of investments on the way, and that's what you will hear. I'm glad to say that my mayor gave us $16 million to change out 50% of our fleet in solid waste, and those vehicles are on the way. I'm proud to say that my mayor gave me $25 million to upgrade facilities that has been disinvested in for decades. I'm proud to say that we got money from our mayor to expand our landfill, create an east side transfer station, and invest in the technology in our solid waste bureau. I'm proud to know that I've been with some of the folks that have been here. They don't remember when those decades, when that happened. I'm proud to say that shortly we've been having a lot of conversations about investment and paying our employees, and I know that will be coming soon. It's because of the support of many of you, it's the support of our mayor, it's the support of our colleagues in many different departments, it's because of the support that you have here with our executive team, but more importantly, it's the support that we're getting from Baltimore City residents that's allowed us to be able to do that. So I just wanted to take that moment to acknowledge the hard work. Is there things that we have to improve on? I don't think there's an organization in America that doesn't. Are we committed to doing that work? Absolutely. So with that, I'm going to pass this presentation over to our deputy director to really begin to talk about our administrative. Then we'll pass it over to our chief of water and wastewater, Joseph Cabetta, and then Ms. Yvonne Moore Jackson, our bureau head of our solid waste, to really showcase some of the questions that you have and answer them, but also we stand ready to answer any questions that you have after this. So again, I want to thank you all and looking forward to the presentation.
Thank you, Director Mitchell, and thank you, Chair McCray and members of the council for opportunity to present to you today. If we go to the next slide, we'll just have a quick overview of our agenda. I'll kick us off in talking about HR and recruitment efforts. We'll have an updates on those projects that you see there on the screen from solid waste, followed with updates on our wastewater treatment plants. In terms of our hiring efforts, if we can advance 2 slides, the department currently has a 25% vacancy rate. And so we're doing a couple of different efforts right now to make sure we're addressing those. One of the biggest ones we've been working on for the past few months is working with our administration, working with city agencies to create some type of bonus and hiring retention program for our CDL drivers. We recognize that those were some of our more critical vacancies within the agency. We've also tackled this and have attempted to fast track employees as quickly as possible to get them into our office and workforce. I'm happy to report out that if you compared us to just a few months ago back in September, we've actually brought on 12 additional CDL2s in our Bureau of Solid Waste, which I know was a critical work and much needed staffing that we needed for their efforts. We've also been working with the Department of Human Resources and a consultant to analyze and look at our positions, class and compensation positions in our Bureau of Water and Wastewater. And so we've been working on that study as well too, and hoping that that will also bring some of our positions in those critical functions for us to market. Just recently, we just held our January 28th hiring event, which was very successful for the agency. And we have also planned hiring events in March and April. Back to our January event, we actually interviewed 58 people on site. A majority of those were actually on the CDL1 and CDL2 positions, and trying to find ways that we can do to better get out into the community and directly recruit for the candidates out in the community. Lastly, I just wanted to touch on our training efforts. We have a lot of programs right now that are creating some good pipelines for us. Our Be More Wise program launched earlier this year. We have 11 candidates currently going through that program. We're starting applications again for our YHTO program, and we've actually begun discussions, which we can get into more details in Q&A, on conversations with Morgan State University to create some better internship pipelines that will hopefully bring in some high-quality candidates to us down in the future. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Bureau of Solid Waste Acting Bureau Head.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to give an update on the recycling community engagement, school recycling efforts, progress on our service requests, and an update on the proposed Eastside Transfer Station. Our strategy and focus is to educate residents on the importance of recycling and what materials to recycle at curbside and at one of our 14 drop-off centers. Our team attends community meetings, also to discuss and answer questions about recycling and other waste diversion activities. We also send messages and information through our monthly newsletter, social media, communications campaigns, radio ads, direct mail, and at special events. In 2022, DPW participated in 7 compost workshops, 12 growth center events, and 4 shred events. We're also partnering with city schools to encourage more recycling and educate students on how to recycle. So far, we have 106 schools that are signed up for recycling. We collect them, and we're hoping that more schools will participate in the future. Next, our 10-year solid waste management plan, which identifies goals for managing the city's solid waste stream, assess existing social, assess the existing solid waste collection systems, both public and private, reviewing current and future disposal capacity needs, and assessing ways in which reuse, recycling, and composting from residential, institutional, and commercial sources are to be implemented. The Maryland Department of Environment requires adaptation of the Maryland Department of Environment requires adoption of the solid waste management plan for 10-year period that must be reviewed and approved by the City Council. The current plan was approved in 2024, and we are in the progress of reviewing and updating the next 10-year period in accordance with the new state waste management requirements. The Baltimore City Public Works will hold its first virtual public meeting to gather feedback for updating the next 10-year solid waste plan on February 22nd from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We are encouraging residents, people who work in the city, environmental advocates, and any other stakeholders to be involved in the development of this plan by attending these meetings and providing comments and action items for discussion. This first meeting will be held at the 60% completion. The remaining virtual meetings will be presented on the overall plan at 90% and 99%. In April, we'll have 2 in-person meetings that will also be available virtually to present the final draft. Our solid waste employees have been doing a great job responding to and closing service requests in the first half of fiscal year 2023. As you can see from this chart, we are closing dirty alley requests that have an SLA of 7 days on average in less than 3 days, dirty streets in less than 2 days, and all collection service requests within 24 hours. We are very proud of our employees for coming to work, completing assignments, and being dedicated to the citizens of Baltimore. In the first half, we received and completed over 160,000 service requests, which is a little over 2% more than we received last year, and we are receiving 5% less service requests called in through 311, and we're hoping to see less service requests come in because we are doing some proactive work in some neighborhoods that need more attention. So proactive cleaning of alleys, streets, and lots in those areas. Just an update on our East Side Transfer Station. This is one of the capital projects that's on the way. It's slated to be built at the closed landfill at 6101 Bowleys Lane. This capital improvement project was requested to increase the capacity of the city trash and recycling disposal. The project includes the design and construction of various structures and facilities, as well as providing an additional location for small haulers and upgrading the citizen drop-off center. DPW has contracted with an environmental engineering firm that have identified 9 acres of that land that will be usable for the transfer station. The next step in this process is there'll be a geotechnical study that's planned to begin this month with the goal of determining the type and the extent of structural conditions suitable for construction of the new facility and assess potential environmental hazards. Due to waste material challenges, approximately 30 feet of thick debris is designated in this area that needs to be tested and analyzed. After completion of the study, a firm will then prepare construction designs, and then we will build it. It's expected to take about 2 years after we get that construction designs phase. So I'm going to hand it over to our Bureau and Wastewater head, Mr. Yosef Kabedi, to go over the next portion of the presentation.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good morning. My name is Yosef Kabedi. I'm the head of the Bureau of Water and Wastewater. Thank you for having us here. What I'll do in the slides coming up is focus on the accomplishments and the progress being made within our wastewater facilities. So the main thing I would like to start off with is as Director Mitchell pointed out at the beginning, there has been a significant improvement in the performance of our wastewater facilities, Patapsco and Back River, and there's work to be done, but still left to be done. But we have been compliant for the past several months at both plants for our effluent limits. So one of the ways that we arrived at this point is through the utilization of emergency authorizations that the director and also the Director of Finance jointly authorized for us to engage with contractors. And staff augmentation was a key part of that strategy. So these emergency authorizations allowed for the addition of expert staff at both plants. We have also been, and we are still in the process of finalizing a compensation study that will allow us to be more competitive in terms of salaries regionally. There's a workforce development program that has already been highlighted, which is Be More Wise. We're very happy to point out that program or that workforce development initiative has started. We have a cohort of 11 participants that are in class 2 days a week, Monday and Tuesday, and then they rotate through our water and wastewater facilities Wednesday through Friday. And we're very excited that to date they're all engaged, getting the experience that they need, and after 6 months, they will be ready, should they choose, to come on board as City of Baltimore employees. Also, the past 18 months or so, the Office of Environmental Regulatory Compliance and Safety was created, and Mr. Darnell Ingram oversees that office. And the initiative or the function behind that office is to come alongside our wastewater and water treatment plants and ensure that we're being compliant in our engagement with our regulators. Increased focus on training is also an ongoing effort. I'll talk later about the program management team that we have on board that is providing training for staff on a recurring basis. And we also have a new chief technical officer for the Department of Public Works that has the mandate to build a training program. Our public outreach has also been enhanced and continues to be the face for all the work that is going on in the wastewater treatment facilities, and to ensure that we can continue to establish or reestablish the trust with our customers as well as our regulators. And then finally, preventive maintenance. That's very key for the long life and longevity of our assets at our treatment plants. And that preventive maintenance program that we're developing is based on a concept called reliability-centered maintenance, which will transform or change the philosophy around maintenance and ensure that our staff are looking at not just doing corrective maintenance, fixing and repairing, but doing the hard work on the front end to avoid failures. Next slide. So I wanted to highlight, again, Back River and Patapsco and focus on the investment and the hard work that has gone on over the past almost 2 years. So in this time span from September of 21 to now, we've spent close to $40 million on various projects to enhance, rehabilitate, and repair various components of both plants. The digesters at Back River are currently undergoing a rehabilitation, and in addition to that, there's a capital improvement project that's going to add more capacity and increase our efficiency. The denitrification filters are very critical for the removal of nutrients, and those filters are at Back River fully operational as they are at Patapsco. The primary settling tanks, as some of you may know, remember when we discussed the PSTs initially, they were the front end of the plant and were not capturing as many solids as they needed to. And now we have, through the repair and rehab of these PSTs, have returned 4 to full working condition, and we expect to get 10 to full working condition by the end of this year. So that was Back River. Patapsco, again, work on mixers that are critical for the removal of nutrients and bacteria. Screens have been replaced, and we are also working on the headworks, the beginning portion of the Patapsco plant. Next slide. So what we have to look forward to in the next 3 to 5 years is a continued investment to further improve the performance of both plants. The big egg-shaped digesters that are the prominent features at Back River, we will be issuing the notice to proceed for that project here in the next month or so. That's an $88 million project that will, again, increase the efficiency in our digester process at Back River. PSTs will also undergo a rehabilitation, capital improvement, as well as the other components of Back River, totaling an investment of close to $160 million. At Patapsco, we have a headworks project, not near the scale of the Back River headworks project, but still a significant investment of about $70 million to improve the operation of grit and solid removal at the head of the Patapsco plant, as well as additional projects to improve our solids management throughout the plant. Again, an investment north of $170 million is what we expect in the next 3 to 5 years at Patapsco. Next slide. So Director Mitchell mentioned best-in-class service. We are fully intent on achieving that vision and returning to best-in-class service. And one of the components of that is the incorporation of a program management team. Atkins Global, they are a global engineering and consulting firm that has diverse set of expertise in wastewater treatment. They are now on board as a program manager, have established a program management office to oversee and support safety training as well as maintenance. As part of that program, we are building a robust asset management program or initiative, again, to make sure that we are doing the necessary preventive maintenance work and heading off any corrective maintenance issues. We will also, in the next few months, onboard another global firm called Jacobs, who will be in charge of handling all of the solids processing at Back River. And again, this will be very critical for the long-term health and performance of the Back River Back River treatment plant. So I just want to stress again before I end that the focus on for us as an agency is to make sure that the success that we have achieved to date is not short-term, but will continue for generations to come. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, with that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, thanks everyone for joining us. I think that was the first time that I heard a teen chant within the chambers, and I appreciated that. I'm going to say that. So I'm going to start going right into staff, and you talked about the report that you were working with Evergreen Solutions to conduct the job classification and compensation study. How long is that report going to take? When is that report going to be finished? Excuse me, when is that study going to be finished?
Good morning. We're in the finishing stages of it.
Can you state your...
Sure. I'm Deepti Moda. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer here. We are working with the partners at DHR on it, and it's at the ending stages. However, to implement the study, it will take us roughly 6 months to a year.
So ending stages, the report should be finished, what, in like a month or?
Again, we're working with DHR on it. We can get back to you once DHR has an answer for us, so.
Ms. Gavarni, can you work with DHR to get us a timeline on when they can actually furnish this report? As all of us know, the council unanimously passed a resolution by Councilman Schleifer, and obviously employment and job compensation, like what these workers are getting paid, is very important to all of us. If we can get a hard deadline on when it's going to be finished. I just have a few questions. One of them was already answered by the Deputy Director. I'm going to say Al, the vacancy rate hasn't changed since the last hearing. It was 25%. The last time we were here, and I've just been told it was 25% again. And Chief Moore Jackson, this first one may be for you. Typically, you give us these numbers. I just needed to know the breakdown for the Bureau of Solid Waste regarding how many vacancies we had for solid waste workers, CDL drivers 1 and 2, and also for the laborer positions.
I can give you the overall vacancy rate for solid waste right now. That's at 13%, just for the Solid Waste Bureau. As far as the breakdown goes, we can pull up those numbers and we can submit it back to you as a follow-up.
Okay. Can you also get me the Bureau of Water and Wastewater as well? Their CDL drivers 1 and 2, and also their laborer positions?
Yes, we can add that to the list. As far as the breakdown goes by bureau, so the water and wastewater is at a 27% vacancy rate.
Okay, we're going to make it a committee request, but Councilman Schleifer is going to add something to it.
No, I was just adding, if you could just send us a list of, you said there's a 25% vacancy rate, is that correct?
For the entire
For the
agency, yes.
If you can just send the committee a list of all of those open positions by bureau.
Sure, yes.
Thank you, Councilman Schleifer. Councilman Schleifer is also going to be the first council member to ask questions, and then we're going to move to Councilman Conway.
Thank you. So when is weekly recycling that's required by law resuming?
Thank you, Councilmember Schleifer, for that question. We presented a report to our council member and to the public a few weeks ago that outlined our process for getting to weekly recycling. We also are working with the administration and the chief administrative officer on brainstorming on ways that we can do that quicker. And so as a result, we'll be providing that information sometime next month on the quickest way for the city to get to weekly recycling.
Okay, so, I mean, I read the report, so it didn't have a timeline. So you're saying, but in a month from now, we'll get a timeline of when it's going to resume?
We're going to provide solutions, the best solutions forward, and we'll be working with not only the city administrator's office in that meeting. We're working with DGS because they help purchase our fleet. We work with the budget office and many other folks. So we're doing a comprehensive dive to find out the best solution forward.
Gotcha. Can you explain why the agency decided to rebrand and why it was so important to do that now?
One of the main goals that we tried to do, and this was some of the feedback that we received during our E. coli scare, it was how do we better message and communicate and educate our public. So there was a many efforts that we took on. We're taking on updating our website so that people can get good content from DPW as it relates to their solid waste, water, and administrative services that we provide. We also, as you probably received in your email today, our third newsletter. That's our monthly newsletter that goes out that really showcase a lot of our programs, but more importantly, some of the great offerings that we have. You've probably been also receiving other alerts on how we're updating on our sinkholes, right? Whether that was the North Ave, the Montebello, all these things were a part of our communication and branding strategy so that we can have better engagement with the public. We're getting really close to enhancing emergency notification system. So if you have a water main break or we miss a garbage route, that we'll be able to contact customers. It all started, I think, about 8 months ago. When you pay your water utility, it asks you a question. Do you want to sign up to receive our newsletter? And it asks you for your phone number and your email address. We had about 20,000 people sign up. So our goal was to create good quality professional content so that we can have that engagement with our customers. But I also want to thank our comms, our internal team. I don't want to name our names, but our branding team and our internal comms team was the folks that actually helped to mock up that logo that you see there. So what we found out in DPW is that we have some talented people that can do this work. Not only the work of creating a beautiful logo, but also the work is really listening to the public and getting information out in a good, concise, clean way so that, again, that we can be best in class. And so it wasn't just a logo. It was a comprehensive look at our communication, branding, and education strategy so that we can have good dialogue with our public.
So I guess I'm confused by that strategy because when I look at your executive team today, I notice there's about 10 of you who are all wearing branded DPW items, including yourself, a DPW mask and pin, and all of you are wearing the old logo look. And rebranding in any organization or corporation, obviously there's a strategy, and then more important than the strategy is actually executing, right? And so it's just very confusing to the public when every time we see members of your executive team, which should be leading by example, everything is the old logo. So what are we supposed to expect? Are we supposed to assume that the branding is an ongoing thing and it's going to be, you know, haphazard? I mean, what's going on here? Because I see on some things you got the old logo, some things you got the new logo. It's just confusing, and the services haven't changed from before to after. So, was the can you just explain what's going on here?
So it's a few things. You know, for example, Nike changed their logo. I still got some old Nikes with Just Do It ads, right?
Would Philip Knight have worn
the
old logo when they're talking about branding a new logo?
So one of the things that we invested over many years is some of the merchandise that you have here. And it was one of our, as we roll out our logo, one of the things that we will roll out over time is new merch. But we're going to utilize what we have now until it's depleted, just because we want to be very conscious with our ratepayers' money. But one of the other things that you mentioned, the services has changed since we rolled out. I'm just going to go back over it so that you can hear it again. When I came here 18 months ago, it was taking us 20 minutes to pick up a phone. We're picking it up in a minute and a half. When I came here 18 months ago, we had 14,000 emails outstanding that was, months and months old. Right now, we have less than 1,000, and it's only a few days old. When I came here, as you know, there were many meters that needed to be replaced. You asked me questions during my hearing when I was confirmed. We have 2 left. When I came here, people were complaining about a 9%, 10% increase over the last 25 years in water rates. We reduced that by 70%. It has changed. I heard from many council members that they're getting less emails. I'm getting less emails, right? We're getting less complaints. They won't ever stop because there always will be compromise in any utility, but we're seeing it less. It has changed. When we walked into here, as Joseph Casbetta said, the wastewater plant, when I walked off the plane, was out of compliance. It is in compliance for the last 8 months. It has changed. When I came here, there wasn't recycling. People were taking it to the curb. They couldn't take it to the curb. They had to take it to the bins. It wasn't street sweeping. It wasn't bulk. It wasn't graffiti. I can talk to Mr. Conway on my first, before I joined here, I was on North Ave, and he would email me every day about the corner cans on North Ave. We're picking them up. It has changed. In the narrative that it hasn't, it's just proof in the numbers. You saw Chief Yvonne Moore-Jackson numbers, that they're responding to those complaints, more complaints than last year, even quicker. And it's because of this team that you have here doing the great work. And so to say that nothing has changed, we can just look at the wastewater treatment plant. It has changed. It's in compliance. We can look at the numbers of the utility rates. It has changed. It's not 10%, it's 3.5. So the fact that things haven't changed, I think we just need to acknowledge the hard work of your team, right? These are the leaders that is making that change. And if no one wants to say thank you, me as their director, I thank them for their work because it has changed.
So thank you for going off on that large tangent. We certainly do thank the hard men and women of the department when things are getting done, and you do have some great staff members, which is why myself and Councilman Cohn have been long advocating for increased raises. We've successfully accomplished that. We're now asking for additional increases in that the city, the administration support the AFSCME request, and hopefully you'll join Councilman Cohn and I in supporting the AFSCME negotiations to make sure that the solid waste workers are getting increased salary and better working conditions. But when I talk about this rebranding and what we got onto this, you're the CEO of a $600 million organization. And no, $600 million organizations, when they conduct a rebrand, you won't see the CEO of that company at press conferences and other forward-facing television appearances and public hearings like this wearing the old look. And I appreciate the comments about protecting the taxpayers' money, but if we were actually cognizant of the taxpayers' money, we wouldn't be doing this rebrand at all, which gets to my other question on this, and then I'll turn it over because we're on the same topic. How much is this rebranding going to cost, and do you have a rebranding strategy plan that you can provide to us so that we can know when we can expect a consistent branding across the agency?
So I appreciate that. We can provide that information to you. And as it relates to the pay for our employees, as you know, in my monthly reports to this body that was requested, since September, I think was our first report, monthly report, we have included in there the work that we have and our team has been doing with DHRM about pay raises as well as bonuses. That has been in my report. That's in the Rubicon report. That's something I've stated at this mic, I think 4 or 5 times since I've been here. It was something I think I stated at my hearing when I started. So I always have said, and I continue to say, our employees deserve an honest pay for an honest day job. And I will never say anything different.
All right, and I agree with that, and
we agree then.
And actions speak louder than words, which is why I've taken action successfully, and which is why I'm going to continue to take action until those workers are being paid better than they would be from these private companies that continuously steal employees literally right off the back of trucks to get hired by these private companies. And so again, my question was, how much is this rebranding going to cost? Surely you have a figure prior to entering into a plan to rebrand. You know a ballpark of how much that's going to cost. And we have a lot of equipment, we have a lot of supplies. It's not just about face masks and pins, it's about the trucks, it's about the letterheads, it's about all the materials. Your agency touches the residents of Baltimore more than any agency in the entire city, probably combined and more often. And so how much of, what is the ballpark figure to rebrand the $600 million a year agency known as DPW? What is the ballpark figure of what that's going to cost?
I think our answer to you just a second ago, we're going to utilize all of our materials that we have now, and once those are depleted, we would simply just reorder it with our new logo. So net increase of that is 0. One of the reasons why I'm wearing the old mask, when they're all done, we'll buy the new mask with the new logo. So it will be a slow rollout as we deplete the resources. Again, it goes to my point to you.
Director.
Is that
Director.
Yes.
Can you furnish to the committee how much the entire Brandon marketing campaign is costing? Right now, I feel like Allen Iverson, we talking about logos.
Yep, we can. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Because I've seen, and I'll leave it on this, but I've seen you guys swap out signage and other existing materials currently with the new logo. And so certainly there is a cost for that. And that should be, if I were to ask the CEO of Nike, since you brought up Nike, how much it costs them to rebrand, they have a plan. Certainly plans change, but they know how much it's going to cost them because they have to furnish that to their stakeholders. You have 585,000 stakeholders.
Councilman Schleifer, it's going to be furnished to the committee. Again, we're talking about logos. We're talking about branding. We're going to, Councilman Conway, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to, thank your team, because there are a couple issues that I brought up months ago that pertain especially to the wastewater treatment plants. Because of some legal issues, we didn't get into a lot of the heat of those questions here in this committee. But your team has been very transparent, having the opportunity for me to go out to one of the plants, understand the problems, and begin to think about how we as a council can be thoughtful going forward. So just really want to thank your team for the work that they've done just to keep me in the loop and doing so transparently for the last couple of months. I wanted to circle back to an issue, and we'll get into this at a later hearing in the Public Safety and Government Operations Committee, but I do want to circle back to the vacancy issue. I know our ability to hire folks is really tough. Of course, salaries have to do with that. I think there's a component of process that's making it difficult to bring people onto into the department. And I think that goes across solid waste and water and wastewater. I was wondering if we had yet a comprehensive plan for how we wanted to tackle hiring. Of course, we're going to have a conversation later on in Public Safety and Government Operations about a proposal that I would like the department to consider. But given the complexity of the jobs, some of them are very simple labor jobs, some of them are like engineering jobs, some of them need CDLs and across the board. That's not going to solve all of our problems. And I want to know if we thought much about what tools we have or tools that we can consider to fill our vacancies across the agency.
That's a great question. Thank you, Councilmember Conway. So we're looking at that as we speak. Part of that strategy is hiring the right staff and the right team and building the right people. We're happy to have our new Chief Administrative Officer with us who brings some knowledge of how city operations work and our experience on the federal level as well. And so we're working on that as we speak to put together a comprehensive plan. It started too with just being more aggressive on our recruitment efforts. So we prioritized the CDL positions, right? And so we were picking up the phone and calling candidates nonstop until they actually responded back to us and tell us, if they're interested in coming to work for DPW. We did that work at the end of 2022, and we exhausted the list. We ran through the list and called every single candidate, sometimes multiple times, just to make sure that they were aware of our positions and that we were getting them into the door in order to work for DPW. So we're still kind of putting the overall large framework together. It'll be coming together in pieces, especially as we roll out these new hiring events and making adjustments to what we see and what we find as far as feedback of what's working and what's not working.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You mentioned you're doing a study. Do you have a sense for the timeline for that study, or even the size and scope and maybe potential costs of that study?
Yeah, so that's the class and compensation study that we've been partnering with DHR and Evergreen Solutions on that. And I think the follow-up question was to get a confirmed date from DHR and when that can be produced. So once we have that, we'll get that back to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I will jump to my next question. This is a question I brought up in our last hearing with the Department of Transportation in reference to a request in the capital budget that I believe DPW put in to replace a water line on Greenmount. If you guys may recall, we very recently just finished construction on Greenmount. You guys did a great job. It took a while, but you did a great job. The road looks great. And I was really proud of the finished product there. It did concern me when I found out just this week that there's a proposal going in to redo that pipe that was just put in less than 2 years ago. It begged the question for me about what controls we have in place for our capital planning projects. That makes sure that we don't go and redo work. I understand this is going to be a larger project that's being put into the capital plan, but certainly if we've got a brand new pipe in there, we know these pipes can last 100 years if treated well. We definitely don't want to dig it out in the next 5. So I'm just curious how do we catch those things? And I think there's also a component here across city agencies and private partners like Comcast and otherwise who dig into the ground. How do we coordinate with them to make sure that we're not double digging and double paying for some of this infrastructure?
I'll start the answer, and if Chief Engineer Wolf would like to add, he can. So as far as that particular project, Councilman Conway, I would need to get back to you on the specific details, but in general, the point that you bring up is very valid, because what we do accomplish on these projects is inspection. Inspection is a very key component of any construction project, so that we can QA the work and make sure that the work is done the way that it's supposed to be and the way that it's designed. And in addition to that, as you know, anytime we are working on buried infrastructure, there's the chance that we are going to run into other utilities. They could be BGE, they could be Verizon, they could be anything. And our plans are not always 100% accurate. So to avoid a lot of these conflicts, we do enter our information for projects in Invista, which is a tool that we use for conflict management within buried infrastructure. So I will need to get back to you on Greenmount, but I just do want to stress the point that we do have inspectors that are verifying that the work is complete according to design on these types of projects.
Thank you. DOT gave a similar answer, both relying on Invista and coordinating across partners, government and otherwise. I think what this process has shown me is somehow things can slip through. And it begs a question for me is how do we make that process tighter? Do we need a review before these things go into our capital projects, just to make sure that nothing has been done in the last 5 years, 10 years even, maybe for some of these water mains? But
Yes, yeah, Councilman Conway, yeah, Tim Wolf, Chief of the Office of Engineering Construction. Yeah, you're talking about the, I'll take this, talking about the 30-inch water main project. It's a longer plan-out job. It's 5 to 7 years out once we start construction. This is a major infrastructure, but we do, like Mr. Cabetti had mentioned, is the Invista. And the other thing we're doing is having monthly meetings with DOT to coordinate our work. We're trying to have regular meetings. I know, like Mercy, there's some work going on there with vicinity gas, or steam, sorry. So we're trying to make sure we coordinate more regularly and, like you said, try to not go back in later. So we're really focused on coordinating with our other agencies. So I just wanted to mention that.
And maybe this is a request for the committee, if we can just figure out how that happened. Not to say maybe we do need to go back in there and dig it up, and I may just be looking too deep into this, but I think it would be helpful for us to figure out how that happened and where were the appropriate controls for us to catch it, because I would not be surprised at all if this happens across the city all the time. But I think it would be a great use of our time to make sure that we can save tax dollars on these very large infrastructure projects, because I would love to put that pipe, or at least that portion of the pipe, somewhere else in the city where we're having water main breaks. So
I will get that information for you, so to get back to the history, how that was coordinated.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, Marcia Collins, DPW, I just wanted to add, Councilman Conway, that we will arrange to get both you and Councilwoman Ramos briefed on the project, what the scope is, so we can pinpoint what some of the problems may be. We have time, because this isn't ready to go yet, so.
Thank you.
Just
That would
wanted to
be
make sure you knew that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No problem. We've been also joined by Councilman James Torrance. Before we go back around, did you have any questions for DPW?
Yes, Madam Chair. So first, as a comment, Director Mitchell, I will say publicly again, thank you for your service. I have seen the improvements. As someone who has dealt with the lingering water bills, I came into 200 complaints that were lingering from the previous council member that we got resolved within 6 months. Now, when we get a request and there's an issue, we're seeing it disputed and the settlement done within 2 to 3 days. So that is remarkable compared to the number of requests we get. We went from 20 down to none monthly. So that is an improvement. But in addition to that, I'm thankful for the partnership we've had with getting a number of West Baltimorean streets cleaned timely and working with housing to do it, given the limited capacity that we have in solid waste. But all the successes aside, thank you. My first question is related to our construction in terms of our water mains. I have one in Hamden, Hose Heights. I'm gonna be transparent with you. The contractor has not been the best. I just wanna make sure that we have honest conversations with these contractors and be frank. If you cannot adhere to the standards for repaving our streets, doing quality work, you may not be employed by the city of Baltimore anymore. I just be frank. I think, and I say that even though you're exiting, I just want to communicate that to the staff. The standard moving forward is that you need to hold your contractors accountable even more. I can say this because I've seen lewd things that lewd things they've done in terms of their staff, poor management of traffic, damage to internal pipes from the contractor that were not expected, and the timeliness and workmanship was not there. And I just want to be frank so that we'd avoid having to redo any infrastructure work. Otherwise than that, thank you for your service, and I would like to know, how are we going to plan to at least hold contractors more accountable for that work?
I'll start. Councilman Torrance, thank you for the question. As far as that particular question, again, I would have to, I'm sorry, I can't see you.
I can see you now.
I would need to research that particular situation. I am interested in what you pointed out, so we will identify what the issues are. There is a process of evaluation of contractors and consultants, the performance of these vendors that is done on a quarterly basis. And whenever our project managers identify issues, they do note it, and we do work with the Office of Boards and Commissions, because in some cases where the performance is egregious, the contractors can be barred from bidding on future projects for a certain period of time. But I'll let Mr. Ingram, did you want to add anything to that, or? No. Okay.
And with that, I have a request. March 15th is when the moratorium on repaving for streets is going to occur. My request to you is to provide, for those projects that have been completed by your contractors, the repavement schedule based off of our work versus BG&E work that we coordinated with, who's responsible for it by the street. I made the same request to transportation as well to keep track of. The reason why is because in a number of my neighborhoods, BG&E did pipe work, did gas work before you did it, did your water main issues. And I just want to make sure we understand, and for the public's accountability of not myself, but also you, that we know after March 15th, who's paving what street, the extent to it, and then who they should contact if they're not happy with it, outside of us calling DOT's inspection team to make sure that they repave it. I just want to make sure we're transparent and coordinating. I know that you guys use Miss Utility to coordinate that, but I just want to make sure that we have a list for council members in our individual districts to know when that repavement's scheduled to be, who's responsible for it, so that if it is not done to standards, we know who we are holding accountable. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back to you.
I want to talk about the route optimization study, so that's going to be my next few questions. One of the necessary changes included were right-sizing the routes. The report stated that currently DPW's trash and recycling routes are simply too large. Right-sizing requires additional equipment and staffing to increase the number of trash and recycling routes. Now, I know that you spoke about the investment that the administration has made to DPW regarding fleet and some vehicles and some other things that you need. But has the agency created or finalized some type of feasibility plan and timeline for actually completing the necessary right sizing?
That's the work that we're doing in coordination with some of our internal departments and administration, and that's the work we embark on to have that comprehensive look. That team includes ourselves, administration, DGS, budget, finance, a whole slew of departments to come up with a comprehensive strategy. And so we're working on that and should have that, I think, sometime in the next month.
I would definitely look forward to a finalized feasibility plan on what is a real timeline to right size and get these services back in order. The investment that you spoke about, I know you mentioned $16 million, $25 million from the administration. When and to order additional vehicles, when are they going to arrive?
So we started the speccing out of the vehicle in November of 21. I think the first order, so just to give a little bit more background, we ordered 15 what we call mini packers. They're like the smaller garbage truck. They're 8 cubic yards. We ordered 50 16 cubic yard. Those are your normal garbage trucks that you see on Baltimore streets. We also ordered 3 front end loaders, which is the Easy Pack. Those are the ones that deal with the condo community. So it's about 68 for 16. We started the conversations in November 21. I think the first PO was approved in March of 2022, I believe. So they've been on order for getting close to a year. It's a national supply chain shortage. We thought some of the chassis would come later last year, but they were pushed back into the spring and summer. So we'll work with DGS to get those updates. But some of the equipment, our chassis that was supposed to go was pushed back. So I don't think we have that date because we're still waiting for the vendor to provide us with some more clear dates on when they are going to provide that. One of the critical aspects is that our vehicles are custom made. There's very few orders of these vehicles in the United States. I think us in DC are the only jurisdiction that use the type of mini packer that we use. And we purchase it because most of our routes are within alleyways and we need smaller 7.5-foot trucks. And so it seems to be taking quite a little long just because the custom aspect of the vehicle.
Just know the previous request, and I see where Councilman Schleifer is going. We have all this equipment coming in, that market and that branding strategy. That's a part of, we're going to send you with the committee requests, exactly what we're looking for this breakdown of how much these logos, the brand and the marketing is going to cost. But my first thought is we're getting all these vehicles, we have to put these decals and these other things on it. So know that we're going to send you an itemized list of what his committee request is regarding how much is the marketing portion of it going to cost.
Perfect, thank you.
Part of the solution to increasing the staffing capacity is also creating a substantial CDL hiring and retention bonus program in collaboration with other city agencies. Have you guys completed, and I know you have the study going on, but outside of the study, have you guys completed any type of operational plan to build out some type of program regarding the retention and bonus program for CDL drivers?
I guess we can talk, yes. One of the things that was critical for us is we struggled with hiring from outside CDL drivers just because our compensation wasn't at market with some of our peers. And so we embarked on a critical program, which was an internal CDL program, meaning if I'm a laborer or solid waste worker on a vehicle, I'm able to get free of charge from DPW, go to class and be able to get a CDL license. Once I pass that license and can prove that I can maneuver that vehicle, I'm able to be promoted. I think that was that program started over a year ago, and we have nearly 20 plus graduates that have graduated. That was one of the programs that was very successful in helping us get many of these operations back and going, because we are able to promote our own, but more importantly, we are able to train our own so that they were able to get into a street sweeper, get into a packer truck, get into a bulk pickup truck, so we're able to get those services online. So our main driver is training our laborers to be able to be drivers, as well as going out and looking for folks outside. So our strategy is both internal and external in developing drivers, but also recruiting more drivers. And I think we, as Deputy Director Luna mentioned, we were successful just recently in bringing on 12 new CDL driver twos, some internal, some external, from all those efforts. And we have to continue this, and that's our commitment, to continue that program, because we have to always make sure there's more folks ready to be able to jump in and drive those vehicles.
The last, I think at the FY23 DPW budget hearing, that program was in a pilot stage. Is that program still in a pilot stage, or has it been expanded?
That program now is it's a program for DPW where all of our employees, whether you're in administration, whether you're in solid waste, whether you're in water, wastewater, or bureau, you're able to apply for that program and get in. This is now a program that has to be baked into what we do here in DPW, because the drivers that we get internally, we see that they stay with us longer, and they're committed to this work. So this is a program that initially was a pilot, but now it is a part of our recruiting and retention efforts.
Thank you. Councilman Schleifer.
Thank you. Director, countless companies provide payment plan solutions. How was Promise Pay chosen?
I can get that information to you on how they were chosen. They went through a process. They do this work around the country, whereby they really help work with our clients to, number one, get on payment plans if they choose. Number two, to get into our LIWOP program, our Water for All program, provide services so that for people that don't know about these services, so they can get engaged and be able to see what the best approach forward to ensure that they have an affordable bill that is something that they can pay.
Was there a bid put out for this services?
Again, I would have to provide that information to you.
The entire executive team's here, so was a bid put out for the services?
I'll have to get the details, but I believe when we started the process, there was one other vendor that provided services, not exactly like Promise, but similar. And we went through a select source process for that selection, but I'll have to get the details on that. This was about, I think, a year and a half ago.
Okay.
It was definitely before Director Mitchell's time.
So, because this has been asked before, so I mean, it's really a simple yes or no. Like, was there a bid put out, asking people, an RFP asking people to submit proposals for a payment plan solution? Because I mean, I keep track of this stuff. I didn't see anything, so I was just wondering if that existed and why this specific company did not go through that process.
Again, we'll get that information to you.
Okay, what is the dollar value of the contract with Promise Pay?
We'll get that information to you. I don't have their contract in front of me.
Okay, you are hosting 5 meetings on the 10-year solid waste plan. 3 of them, the first 3 of them are virtual. Those are all conducted by the time you're done the virtual ones, according to the slides. The plan will have been 99% complete before you have any in-person meetings or town halls on this. How come we are not having the in-person town halls prior to the plan being 99% complete?
The virtual meetings are being...
You got to come up to the microphone.
Good morning, everyone. Toya Sykes Coates, Chief of Administration for the Bureau of Solid Waste. The virtual meetings are actually to pull together the draft of the plan. So it's not going to be completed. This is just our opportunity to come together, get information and input from internal staff, our stakeholders, and other agencies that will be providing and who are obligated to provide their input based on what the plan requires. Once we get to the in-person meeting, gives everyone an opportunity to take a look at the full draft. We will then take into consideration all the input that we receive to complete the draft.
So, I mean, why wouldn't we want the residents of Baltimore's input, in person prior to getting to that completion where we can hear what they have to say and use that feedback to finalizing the plan?
Councilman, that doesn't negate them or take away their opportunity to give us their input. By the time that they receive the draft, it will be in full, disclosure to them to review. We don't want to give them a product that is halfway finished. We want to be able to give them something that they can review in its entirety so that they then can provide, a better input on what the plan looks like on a whole instead of giving them something that's not completed.
So then why are we having virtual town halls before it's completed? Why
It's a draft. It'll be 99% complete.
Right. So that's the slide said that the beginning town halls, I think, or when it was like 60%. And so why 3 virtual town halls instead of an in-person town hall prior to getting to that point. So if we're willing to have a town, I hear the strategy either way. I mean, that's a matter of preference, but if you're having town halls when it's at 60%, where you want the most feedback possible before finalizing a plan, why are those all virtual and not having at least one of those in-person town halls prior to, so you do in-person, virtual, something like that? Why 99% complete with virtual, and then we're now gonna meet with people face-to-face and let them give input?
So based on how the actual plan is pulled together, the guidelines in which we follow, we are required to give 3 virtual and up to 2 in person.
So, and that's required to follow that order, to have 3 virtual and then 2 in person?
Yes, sir.
And where are those guidelines?
We have them. We can provide that information to you.
Okay, and I've requested numerous times in writing to have additional input. This is a 10-year plan. Again, this is an agency that touches the residents of Baltimore more than any other agency. And so I've requested to have an additional in-person presentation on this. That has been denied. Is there a reason why we can't do another one?
Are you saying that, so let's digress for a second, because we are knowledgeable of the fact that you requested one of the in-person meetings to take place in your district.
Correct.
And we are actually working on providing a location and securing a location for that to happen.
In my district?
In your district, yes, sir.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. We are only required to do 2 in-persons, so we aren't able to extend that offer to an additional 3rd in-person meeting.
Okay. Well, thank you for delivering some good news today.
You're welcome.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the Clean Core program, you pick locations that based on 301 requests. So if a 301 request comes in for illegal dumping, who's going to go out and clean it up? Is it going to be the Clean Core crew, or is it going to be the solid waste crew that currently cleans it up?
Okay, so Clean Core, the vendors for Clean Core in certain, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
The vendors for Clean Core are in 15 neighborhoods. They have set areas that they are responsible for cleaning streets, alleys, and vacant lots. So in those areas, we will only assist, the DPW crews will only assist if there are items that they're unable to remove. So they have specific areas in those communities that they are responsible for.
So just to clarify, so all 301 requests that come in to those neighborhoods that are covered by Clean Core, all those 301 requests are getting forwarded to those entities?
So all 311 come to DPW, our solid waste teams. If it's in the area of responsibility, and we forward to the supervisor of that area to handle. We're not going to duplicate efforts here.
Okay, so that is going to just be forwarded to them. And when you say things that they can't do, I mean, one of the original pitch back in, I think it was August, I believe it was that they were, the city administrator at the time said that these Clean Core groups are going to be doing stuff that that the agency was struggling with some of the more significant illegal dumping sites. So what's going to differentiate between whether it's something they can do versus something DPW? Is it based on size? Is it based on what's dumped there?
Yes, it's going to be based on what's there, depending on the type of vehicles that these vendors are using in the area. They may not be equipped with, if it may need a Bobcat or something like. They don't have Bobcats, so those things we would have to go out and take care of. So they're basically going to be doing cleaning alleys, cleaning vacant lots, cleaning streets and sidewalks, with using residents that live in those neighborhoods.
Gotcha. So the employees, you're saying, of in each of those entities are going to reside in the neighborhoods that they serve?
Well, they're all residents of the city.
Right. They're all city residents, but not residents of the neighborhoods that they're cleaning.
I just want to say this is not our program. The programming aspect of that is with the Department of Planning. Our role was to provide that operational support. Those details would be something that Director Ryder would be able to handle.
Right, and so they've actually directed me to you. So who's like the point person that works for the city that's going to be overseeing this? So I understand if the 301 requests, they come into you, you're going to forward them to them. I get that piece. But who's overseeing it? So if somebody in one of these neighborhoods, like there's one of them that's in my district, there's illegal dumping that's not getting cleaned up. Who do we as a council reach out to? Who's responsible for overseeing those crews from the city standpoint? That's going to ultimately be responsible. So who's overseeing these groups? Is that you?
No, so the Department of Planning is the lead for this Clean Core program. They are the lead.
So
we are supporting them in this program.
So if there's an illegal dumping site that isn't getting cleaned up, or trash that's not getting cleaned up in one of these 15 neighborhoods, we should call the director of planning?
Now, I would say you should call 311, and then we'll distinguish whether it should be our crews or if it should be Clean Core. And if it is Clean Core, we will submit it to their supervisor of that neighborhood.
So what I'm referencing as a council, we handle when things are not getting done the right way. So yes, we always tell people to enter everything into 311. 301 works most of the time, and so when it doesn't, you know this, that when there's times when it doesn't, I've reached out directly to you. You've been responsive, and and direct your crew to go and deal with whatever that issue is. In this case, a constituent reaches out. I put this into 311 5 times over the past 3 months. This stuff is still there. This is a common theme we've all heard before in our districts. It is now a Clean Core neighborhood. So who's in charge of, from the city side, who's in charge of telling the Clean Core crew, this has been in there for a few months now, it hasn't been picked up. Who's in charge of them to make sure that that's happening, to hold them accountable from the city?
Yeah, it would be somebody, probably the project manager over in planning, but it's not a person within DPW.
Ms. Gavin, who's the contact person? This is something that's coming from the administration. So DOP is the lead agency. Who's the contact person if Councilman Schleifer or any other council, I don't have one of these Clean Cores in my district, but who's that contact person?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Can you explain more?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. Can you clarify, in terms of responding from the side of MOGR?
We're talking about Clean Core.
Okay.
So who's the contact person within the Department of Planning? We know DPW is not the lead agency on this. When Councilman Schleifer or any other council person who's running into an issue is not getting something cleaned up in one of these zones, or a resident is complaining, he doesn't want to put in a 311. He doesn't want to contact an agency.
It's already been in 311.
It's already been in 311. He doesn't want to keep putting it in 311. So who's that person at DOP within the Department of Planning who's leading this?
Yeah, I don't have the answer right now, but I'll make sure
Can you
to
get that to us just
Yes,
this afternoon?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a committee request?
Yep.
Just another committee request, if we can write this down. So Director, you said earlier in your presentation that you listed off a few different expenditures that DPW is getting for infrastructure. Glad to hear that, because the last time we heard from the ARPA office and DPW, we had asked how much money for that stuff was coming to you guys. At that time, it was only $10 million. I'm glad that that number has now multiplied multiple times. Can you provide to the committee in writing how much money is coming to DPW for infrastructure and for what items? You listed off, I think, 10 million, then you said 25 million, and I think there was another 15 million or 10 million. Just what those are and what those are for, and when we can expect those items. So if it's for new trash trucks, that's great. How many of them were ordered? How much did that cost? And when can we expect them to arrive? Is that clear?
We'll work with the department. As you know, the Department of Fleet, DGS does it. We'll work with our partners there, but yes, we can provide that information.
Yes, and before we move on, I do have a name for you. So Kimberly Knox and Nicole Stewart for Clean Core. They are the project managers for it. So you can contact those two people.
Okay.
All right.
Councilman Torrance.
I was just going to add to that, but I also make this another committee request because it's something I've discussed with planning. A process map. Reason why is because
Councilman, you got to speak into the mic for
yeah,
us.
I requested from planning a process map because if they're going into 311, especially in the areas that are Clean Core in my district, I just want to know what the coordination and the timelines are, especially if they're immediately on the ground. So to get that process out, especially programmatically in terms of communication, because I know your timeline when housing has to come out. I just want to make sure, how does this work across housing? How does this work across DPW when you have to intervene? And how does this work with the actual vendor? And then how do they have access to actual Salesforce to communicate the actions they made and also provide the proof that your agency provides in terms of pictures before and after? So I just want to make sure that's a formal request for the committee so that we all get the same information about how that's going to happen. One, the coordination between housing, DPW, Clean Core, and planning, and then the timelines of whether if you guys are handling it or whether the Clean Core organization is handling it with the actual people, and what those timelines look like, so it could be clearly communicated to the public, because the 10-day service request may not be the same for those areas.
We have one last question that's going to be from Councilman Schleifer.
So just my last question, Director, if I can just get a yes or no. I know I asked it before, but just wanted some clarity. Do you support AFSCME and their negotiations for the increased raises and better working conditions for the DPW employees that AFSCME represents? There's negotiations that are ongoing right now. Do you support AFSCME?
I'll say it as I said it early. I support my employees getting an honest day pay for honest day work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what come out of those discussions and negotiations. Thank you.
So you don't support the stuff that AFSCME is asking for, or you do support the stuff that AFSCME is asking for?
I think you heard my response. Thank you.
Well, you didn't answer the question. Like, I could say very clearly, I fully support the request that AFSCME is making on behalf of the workers at DPW to improve the working conditions and the working pay and the pay that they're requesting. You know, honest days work for honest days pay that's not enough. I mean, these workers deserve more than just, honest pay. They deserve excellent pay, and they deserve pay above that of what they would get in other entities, because if they worked for a private company, they would not be working as hard as they are currently right now in DPW. So I just want to know, do you support AFSCME's position in these negotiations?
Again, I support an honest day pay for honest day work, and I support our administration in negotiating that. I know that those are negotiations going on via our administration, and I support their efforts in doing that. As they go through negotiations, I can't make any more comments about the negotiations, but I support an honest day pay for honest day work.
So how much does an honest day of work deserve to be paid?
I think we'll find out.
And on that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Director, I definitely want to thank you for your service, for your commitment to the residents of Baltimore City. Like Councilman Torrance said, I do want to go on the record to show, hey, we've seen progress. Water billing issues was the #1 thing that came through my office, and I have told many people, we went from getting about 20 to 50 a week. 20 to 50 a week back in 2019 when I came in June of 2019, and I'm barely getting about 2 to 3 a month, and I know that that's because of the work that's been done by DPW. There are other things that have been done during your tenure, and I want to let you know again, thank you for your service, sir. We are now in recess. We will be reconvened in the legislative oversight hearings in the future to go over important information.